around 10 o'clock. Kelly McCagg. Oh, wait, let me. It is 9:04 and I'm calling to order the meeting of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. It is December 16th. My name is Catherine Delnau. I am the chair of the working group and I am the state librarian and commissioner of the Department of Libraries. And now I will move into our roll call and just have everyone, if you could just unmute and let me know that you're here. So the first, I'll just go alphabetically. Meg Allison is absent today, excused. Maria Avery will be arriving at 10 a.m. Jeanette Bear.
I'm here by phone.
Wonderful. Catherine Delnau, I am here. Denise Hersey. Okay, she's not here yet. I hope I didn't miss a message from her. It's been a busy week. Christopher Kaufman Ilstrup.
Hi, I'm here.
Great. Andy Kolovos.
Here.
Great. Kelly McCagg will be arriving around 10 a.m. There's some things going on locally for her and her team. She's going to be potentially popping in and out. Karen McCullough.
I am here.
Excellent. Susan is bravely here with no power, right, Susan?
Yes, I am here on phone.
Great. And Wendy Sharkey.
I am here.
Super. Okay. So those are the members of the working group. Now I want to do roll call for others who are here on the call. I believe that Tom McMurdo is here. Is that correct?
Good morning, all.
Hey, Tom. Jeanette Schaefer.
Yep, I'm here.
Great. And Tom and Jeanette are both assistant state librarians at the Department of Libraries. Josh Muse, technology consultant at the department.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. Is April here this morning?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning, April Shaw. April's our government services and reference librarian. Is Karen here today? Karen Grablin? Yes.
I am. Good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Karen's our inclusive services consultant. I think Jonathan is here, right?
Good morning.
Good morning, Jonathan Clark. Can you tell us your title? I don't know why I'm telling everybody people's titles. Please tell us your title. Sorry.
Oh, the short version is Youth Services Consultant.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Joy Moreland, are you here this morning?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. And can you tell us all your...
somewhere else so I'm not disturbing you.
I'm the consultant for continuing education and small and rural libraries.
Thank you so much. Okay, oh, here's your checkbox. Tanya Riles.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And
I'm the governance and management consultant.
thank you so much. Okay, and we have one more person who I want to thank profusely. Lauren Kelly, are you here this morning?
Yes, good morning. I'm here.
Wonderful. And you're our technical services librarian, but you've also been so helpful in offering to take minutes and to get those out to us in really quick fashion so that we meet the open meeting law requirements. So I want to say thank you to you, Lauren, for taking minutes today and let the working group know that this is Lauren's, we hope, final time of doing minutes for quite a long time because we'll be having a new executive assistant join our team on Monday. So look for that message on the library list serves. But thank you, Lauren, for your help.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay, so we've done roll call. I'm a little bit discombobulated this morning being in a different location to host the meeting, so please bear with me while I shuffle papers in my little space. So let's move on to our next topic on the agenda, which is public comment. Oh, hang on for 1 second. We have another VitLib Department of Libraries staff member, and I'd like to ask Jeanette to introduce her to us.
Yes, we have Lily Talbert here. Hi, Lily. Nice to see your face. And Lily is our new, as of 2 weeks ago, communications and administrative coordinator. And she has sort of a dual role where she's helping the library advancement team with administrative things, and then also is our communications person. Welcome, Lily.
Morning.
Welcome, Lily. Thanks for joining us. Before I move to the next agenda item, I want to check, is there anyone who I missed who is here this morning? I do actually see that there are some guests. So I'm going to call on Barbara Ball from Windsor Library.
Good morning. I'm just here to listen and learn. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. And then there are two phone numbers, but I think the two phone numbers we've already accounted for with our commission, not our commission, our working group members. Am I correct?
I believe that you're correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Now let's move into the second item on the agenda, which is public comment. And here, we do have one member of the public present. So Barbara, I don't know how familiar you are with our meeting structure, but this would be the time if since you're not listed on the agenda anywhere, if you have something to share related to today's topic or any other topic that's in the purview of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont, this would be the time when you could share your thoughts on the topic on the topic of your choosing with the working group. So just want to check with you if you have any comments you'd like to share with us.
I'm just so excited with the work you all are doing. I really appreciate everyone who's doing this hard work. And I'm taking the opportunity of a snowy day when I can actually check in and listen and see how things are going. So thank you.
You're welcome. If later on in the meeting if you stay for the duration of the meeting and you do have something you'd like to share out about, then I may be able to call on you depending on timing. So you could just put your hand up. Probably for each topic, one hand up time would be appropriate for public comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Before we move to the approval of the minutes, something I didn't put on the agenda formally, but that we can do at the top of any agenda is to add additional agenda items and to review the agenda. Seems like a good idea. And there is a topic that I think we might want to put on to add briefly today. So today we've got the approval of minutes of our November 18th, 2022 meeting. Then we have staffing and salaries survey development. Then we have the topic of future meeting topics and dates. And then we have a programming overview. I would like for the working group to briefly discuss the report writing. So I'm gonna, if it's agreeable to everyone, I'm gonna add that between the programming overview and the adjournment, if we have time to put in that topic. Does that sound agreeable to the working group members?
Yes, Andy here. Yes.
Great, thank you. It's kind of stalled out. So I think we need a different strategy. So we'll talk about that in the new agenda item 7. So now our agenda has 8 items, with adjournment being the 8th. Okay, so let's move to agenda item 3, which is approval of minutes, with a possible action to approve the minutes of the working group meeting on November 18th, 2022. Those were shared out with everyone on the working group website, and I believe we sent them out by email to working group members as well. And that meeting was on the topic of continuing education, just to refresh your memories. I'm hopeful that working group members, that you had a chance to review the minutes in advance, and that we can talk about any needs for revision or changes to them. And that somebody will move to approve the minutes so that we can then move to the discussion of them.
I'll move to approve the minutes of November the 18th meeting.
Thanks, Wendy.
This is-
Is it?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, this is Karen. I can second that motion.
Thank you, Karen. All right, let's have a discussion now. Are there any edits or tweaks that people recommend? Anything that wasn't captured in the minutes? Or any typos that you notice in the minutes too would be great. Hearing no need for revision, I'm going to call a vote by members of the working group. So all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Oh. All opposed, please say nay. Great. I believe that they are approved unanimously. And thank you so much again to Lauren Kelly from the department for your great work on those. Just so you all know, behind the scenes, there was very little need to revise the minutes that Lauren took. She's done a great job with that, and I really appreciate her time and energy. And it is a little bit hard with a Friday meeting to meet the 5-day requirement. If I ever lead another working group, I will think about that because we burn 2 days each time. So it's a 5 calendar day, not a 5 working day requirement. And so we lose Saturday and Sunday. So Lauren's been plugging away at the minutes on Mondays, I think, so that they can be ready for me to review, and then we can get them up Tuesdays or Wednesday, the fifth day. So thank you to Lauren. Okay, I'm gonna move us into topic 4, which is staffing and salaries survey development. The working group had previously approved that the department would go out in search of a consultant to work with us on the development of a staffing and salaries survey. I was in contact with a consultant, as was Lucy Fortier, our contracts and grants administrator. And what we have found is that I don't think this will be a great surprise to anyone, that the scope of work that we had proposed is quite extensive, because the working group had initially wanted, or the current working group charge was to, within the $12,000 that we have allocated to the working group, work with a consultant to survey public, school, and academic libraries of all varieties, of all flavors. So the municipal libraries, the public schools, the private schools, the incorporated public libraries, academic institutions of both varieties. From what I understand from the folks that we've spoken with, that scope of work of coming to the meeting and working with us on the questions and delivering a survey to probably at least 400, 500 institutions, it would exceed our $12,000 budget. So I wanted to come back to the group today to share with you my recommendation and where we are, and to talk about that together. Given the data sets we have available, we currently have access to a data set from the Agency of Education that covers all of the school libraries and includes data about the FTEs, the number of staff, and I think the salaries of the school media specialist. April Shaw had pulled that data for us and is reaching out to see when the data set will be updated again. I think we do need to connect with AOE to understand their data set fully. But there is a good deal of data available on school libraries without conducting a survey of that group. I don't want to put April on the spot, but I'm also blanking right now. So I'm going to check to see if she or Josh or another member of the team happens to have at their in their knowledge base right now, or if any member of the working group is that data set that is available, does it include both public and private schools, or is there a gap of information about public school libraries? April, do you happen to recall that?
I believe it also has private school information. I'm
Okay.
just double checking really quickly.
I'm so glad we have you on the call, because if there's anyone who can quickly do a fact check for us, it's our crackerjack government services and reference librarian, April Shaw.
The school list that I'm seeing actually does not have some of the private schools that I know of listed. So it looks like it is public only, but I'm betting it is anyone who receives grants or monies from Agency of Education. But I am happy to add that to my questions for them.
Okay. Something that's important to know, to think about, is that the agency, there was a recent legal, there was a recent news story about public schools, I'm sorry, about private schools and funding from AOE around school choice. So it would be, I think, April, let's touch base before you reach out to them to see if that will impact who they survey in the future. I would recommend there's a little bit of a challenge that we have, because Agency of Education is in a different agency than the Department of Libraries. And I think one thing that we could recommend, that the working group could recommend, is that Agency of Education do a comprehensive survey of school librarians within their purview. Given that the school library environments, well, I guess I want to check with you all about what do you think about the idea of really focusing this survey on the public library staffing and salaries, which is seemingly an area where the salaries are the lowest and where the least is known, and it's completely within the data set that we've already got within the department. Because the other option is, where do we come up with additional funding? And I don't have a mechanism for that, to be frank.
Do we know what proportion of school librarians are unionized? Are all schools participating in a union at this point or not?
I would doubt that all private schools are participating in it.
Right. So this is Karen again. I don't know of any public schools that don't have access to a union. I'm trying to think. But I would agree that I think there are probably at least some private schools that do not. one thing that I want to just weigh in on about the AOE data that may exist for school libraries is that school librarians are not filling out those surveys. So they get filled out by someone in the central office, but I think it varies school to school or district to district. So, you know, I don't think anyone would intentionally fill out the survey wrong, but they may answer questions that they don't actually totally understand or know the answer to. So who knows?
Yeah, so the data that we have in the department from public libraries, typically the public library director or their designee who has access to the information is filling out the PLS, the Public Library Survey, and the SLA every 2 years. I feel like a recommendation of this working group could be that we also, that we as a state develop a mechanism for doing similar surveys, something similar to the PLS, which doesn't, Josh, Josh Muse is here and he administers our PLS and SLA surveys. Josh, there's an FTE count in the PLS, and there's also a total staffing budget included in the PLS currently.
Yep, that's correct. Those are the two pieces that we get.
So, just trying to think in the recommendations of the working group, we might be able to that we might consider adding some type of survey, adding the recommendation that someone, potentially AOE or the department, add an additional survey of school libraries that's done annually and collects data like the circulation, the holdings, the resources that the schools have for private and public schools, and includes the same high-level overview information of number of FTE and also the staffing budgets. The working group could recommend something further than that to AOE, but we don't have any representation from AOE in the working group, and I think we've noticed that there's this area that there's some lack of clarity around some of the aspects with school librarianship. That's emerging for me. I'm just wondering if, given the limited resources we have, if it would be a good idea, and the complexity of potentially trying to get all of the school libraries in the state to respond to an out of nowhere survey, if we might just focus on the public libraries, because I think that from what Lucy and I have discerned through the conversations with various folks, think that we could potentially accomplish the public library piece with the funding we have available. So, what if folks think about that idea?
So this is Karen again.
Yeah.
I think recommending, putting a recommendation out there as part of the report that the AOE should or could survey school libraries makes perfect sense. And they would be a good collector of that data. I just want to make sure that it's weird when we have entities that sort of like live in two different, so like school libraries live under the Agency of Education, but we also want to make sure that our voice is heard here, you know, at Department of Libraries, which it 100% is by the folks, you know, who matter. But just making sure that we stay like present in that report, I think is really important. So yes, yes to the AOE should collect that data. I think that makes very good sense.
Okay.
And I've been around long enough that there used to be a Department of Library survey that went to school librarians, I believe in the fall, right when school was starting.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean,
I feel
so
like this is an area where
it's done for many.
That's Jeanette speaking, right?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Sorry, I get confused with the phones. Jeanette, we can look at if we have any history of that and what was collected. I think for me, I see a real need for increased communication and partnership between the department and AOE so that we are together supporting libraries. They don't have a library, as we've heard from folks in the community and also from conversations with AOE, they don't have a dedicated library specialist or supporter in their team in AOE, from what I understand. And so figuring out how to bolster that communication and that kind of trans agency or cross agency support for school librarians is something that seems like it's a good idea. And that probably includes regularizing some sort of data collection with surveys to be completed by the media specialists themselves in the schools.
Right.
So I want to be sure for the minutes, Lauren, that you capture that as like a possible working group recommendation. Can you be sure to flag that so that we kind of keep it on a running list of our working group recommendations?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. So I want to do just a quick check. Is there anyone who would, and now we've been talking about the school libraries, like the K to 12 libraries, or even conceivably younger if there are schools that have support for the younger than K set. I'm also concerned that we don't have the funding to do a real survey of the academic institutions. And we've really had pretty limited involvement aside from the participation by two academic librarians, of course, from UVM. I'm sorry, is that correct? I want to be sure that Maria and Denise have been great participants in this, but we've been seeing really like kind of not that much from academic librarians as far as testimony. And I'm just concerned that with limited funds, that we not spend too much time going into that area that's really usually outside the department's, largely outside the department's scope. But again, maybe try to encourage that group to potentially facilitate a survey if they would like to on their own. I'm not sure how to, it feels like the scope of our group far exceeds the scope. In an ideal world, we would include everybody in a survey, but the scope of our work far exceeds the scope of our budget. So I'm just, we're kind of in a spot where it's like, where's the screaming need? So I know that Maria's coming a little bit later this morning. Denise, I don't think is here right now. So I want to hear from more folks. Susan.
Hi, hopefully this will work. My internet is back on, but a little spotty. I'll say, obviously, I am biased, certainly. The need for public libraries to have this information, I think, is really crucial. And I think the presence of the 2012 VLA survey makes that even more crucial. I've heard of libraries who are using that information to say, well, the state recommends this is all we need to pay our librarian. And that information is 10 years old now. So I think that's one compelling reason to make sure that at least the public libraries are surveyed. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Susan. Other folks, and please, you don't need to be a school or public librarian to have an opinion on this. Everybody in the group can weigh in, and it's a little, I feel uncomfortable making the call just myself because that's not how the working group works. So I want to be sure we hear from folks and if there are concerns. So thanks for those of you who have raised your hand. Wendy's literally raising her hand. Excellent. Go, Wendy.
If we do just do it for the public libraries, is there any reason why the same survey couldn't later be applied to other agencies?
No, there's not.
So we could sort of like start small and aim bigger?
Yeah. That's a great idea. So we could say, this is the survey we developed. These are the set of questions. We had money to do this, and we recommend that this same survey be regularized somehow and be expanded. Okay, Lauren, I hope you caught that part. If not, it's being recorded. But I think that adding a recommendation, not just that someone do it, but that it be sort of done in a parallel methodology, if possible, would be, that seems like if we're all collecting the data in the same way, that would be probably the ideal. And for now, we have to say, well, this is the part we can bite off. One thing we want to be careful of is the positions themselves might be slightly different, but you know, for example, I actually I have a draft survey that I want to share with you today. And we'll see that the positions are really specific to the national library industry. They may need to be tweaked for our Vermont environment. But the list of positions could change based on the types of positions that they have in school libraries. For example, like the library clerk, that position would be titled whatever we call it in Vermont schools. And the positions in the academic libraries might be slightly different, but we would try to have each survey encompass like this set of information about the specific positions and about the compensation and about the benefits. Does that recommend, I mean, we may have like an official recommendation we're making here. Does that recommendation sound pretty good to everyone here who is a working group member?
I think it sounds reasonable.
Wendy, you're the only one on screen, so we're going with it. Susan hopped on screen so I can see too. I want to just share, I know that there are sometimes concerns about being on screen. Hosting the meeting and trying to know if we have consensus without seeing your faces is extraordinarily difficult. So folks who are off screen, please know that I get that like there might be things going on in your house or you've got a living room as messy as what's over there in my home. We all have different situations that we're in, but it does help me to know we're all on the same page if I can visually see that visual cue, or if you can unmute as we ask for times of consensus, because it's hard to say we have consensus if I get no feedback visually or orally from members of the group. Karen, thanks for hopping on, and she's got a thumbs up. Christopher has a thumbs up in the chat, which is great.
I have my question would be about time frame and if there's anything in the recommendation about the timing of this, and I want it done tomorrow, please, or maybe this afternoon by 5, that'd be better.
So when we make the recommendation, we should suggest not just that they do it, but that they do it within a certain time period. Okay. I think that makes sense and that we should try to annualize them in a certain way. And it might be that work-wise, I mean, particularly, God help us if the department's going to take on extra work around any of these surveys. I mean, I don't see this as necessarily the department's work, and that's part of what's tricky about it. So I think we have to, I think that's part of the issue is like, is the salary survey part of a department's work or not? How do we, as a working group, make a recommendation to VLA or some other group that they should pay the consultant to implement the survey, or that they should find a way to implement the survey? That it could be that the working group recommendation isn't to AOA, it's to VISLA. There are kind of two survey elements. There's like the how many collections do you have, the PLS survey data. That falls clearly with us. But then the other set of like the staffing and the how much is taken on, that we need to get some clarity around that and figure out who we're making the recommendation to. So that might be something for us to think about over time. There is something challenging about agencies of state government setting minimum salary standards. Like that's not the role we usually have with public libraries, for sure, because each municipality is independently run. And this is, I am sure that with the school districts, it's the same way. And that all of this is through contracts and negotiations. And it's one thing to benchmark, and you'll see where I'm going with that. It's one thing to benchmark what exists. It's another thing to direct what should be. And in some ways, the charge of the working group might be a bit of an overreach, that we're going to figure out how to best retain people. Like, I can't make that recommendation. I'm not an economist. I don't think any of us are. So thinking of what we can really actually hope to do with this.
I have a question about would it be possible, once this survey is developed, to reuse the survey each year? Could our recommendation be that the VLA use the same survey each year to be collecting this data, which could be used for advocacy purposes, which should fall under the VLA, not the Department of Libraries? Does it need to be done professionally each year? I guess that's my question.
I don't know that it does need to be done professionally each year. I think if we develop the tool, as long as the organization is surveying everyone, not just members, I think that's one of the things that's been a potential issue, is that the advocacy groups, the professional organizations need to be inclusive. They need to be inclusive in their distribution of the survey to all people, all libraries. The draft survey that I've got to share with you during this conversation is a survey to be completed by library directors, not by individual staff. And that was something our group had talked about previously, and that model works really well at getting like the real information, a real understanding of how are these things, what is the current budget, and what is the current salary, and what are the benefits, and how are they given to people, how is it determined. We have very good success, I think, in the department of working with the lead of the institution rather than having every single member of the organization fill out a survey. So this survey might look very different from what VLA had done in the past. But if it's to be used as an advocacy tool, that it be the professional organizations. So I think actually we should refine the recommendation a little bit. My recommendation, my sense is that we could recommend that someone, the department, AOE, the state agency, get an overview type survey similar to the PLS of the school libraries and the academic libraries, with the collection data, the circulation data, the resource data, the overview. But that the salary surveys, we recommend that be conducted by the professional organizations using the existing format and surveying all professionals potentially in the state, not just all library professionals, all institutions, not directly the library professionals, but all institutions covering all of the people in the state, rather than just members. So it would really be a recommendation to the section to VISLA, to VLA's public library section, to VLA's academic library section. And here's the tool. And here's the best practice for conducting it so that it's maybe not just through a Google survey or something. Like maybe there's a, you know, how anonymous or how secure does the data need to be kept and things like that. Now, those groups are not public bodies, and they can make decisions on how to implement the survey the best way and how to keep everybody's data safe and how to share the data. Okay.
I do like all that. I would also say that we ought to recommend some method of getting the information back and joined together from all these different places, so that they don't continue being, they're just over there and they're over there and and we're in the middle, or wherever. So some way of bringing all the data back together again at some point.
And my thought, I don't have a recommendation here, but just a thought, a thought about a problem with it. You know, thinking about it in terms of VLA, the turnover there is intended to be very regular. So how we can make this recommendation and for a year or two, it would be remembered. Is there something that we could do to help ensure that this becomes simply a part of what's done? And that might not be a question for the working group. It might be a question for VLA, but just speaking out loud about an issue I see.
Well, I also think there may be a difference. I would want to see how this works and see how it plays out. I like the course we're on right now. There is a total difference between benchmarking and advocating. There really is. Like, you know, we already include a couple of questions about the PLS already includes how much money is spent, how many FTE do you have? We've been including that for years, and that's not so problematic. The problem comes in when we want to use this data to say you must pay at least this. This is our recommendation. You see what I mean? Like, so maybe let's kind of keep that in mind. And I want to share, if it's okay, I want to mention Andy Kolovos came on screen and thumbs up a couple minutes ago, before Susan spoke, about just saying this approach sounds good. So I would like to, I think what we should probably do now is to take a vote of the working group members who are present. We have 1, 2, 3. There are 11 working group members. So we need, is that true? So we need half plus 1, which is a little confusing because that isn't full humans. So, oh great, Christopher, you're back. We're about to vote on something. So I just want to can I ask if someone can move that the working group survey focus specifically on the Vermont public libraries?
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second on that?
Seconded, Andy.
Great. Okay, so let's take a roll call vote, which may or may not be necessary, but I just want to do it that way so we know if we have enough to take action, because we don't have full attendance right now. So Jeanette,
Yes.
do you? Yes. Okay.
That's an affirmative.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm voting yes. Denise, has Denise come yet or no? Okay. Christopher,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Kelly's not yet here. Karen,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Wendy.
Yes.
So we have 7. So I believe that that is enough to move forward. Okay.
0.5 more.
We have an extra half a person. Woohoo! Extra half a vote. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Now I would like to share my screen. I have a draft. This is a preliminary draft. The goal of this draft, the way that the questions are framed, is to benchmark existing staffing capacity. And so current staffing capacity, if all positions are filled. So if we're not doing a vacancy rate survey, we're doing what are you budgeted to have? What are the public libraries budgeted to have? What capacity staff? And what salaries, what's the average salary for staff in that position? If there's one librarian, it's very easy to answer. You do their hourly salary. If you have 3 librarians, the director would average the 3 people in the same classification and provide the average of the current rate of pay for those staff in that classification. So this is a benchmarking survey to determine the current staffing complement that is budgeted and the current rate of pay for those staff. So let me try to share just the window that I'm trying to share. Let's see if that's not it. That's not it. Hang on. This is it. Do you see something that says staffing and salaries survey, preliminary draft for review and discussion by the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this survey has been looked at for free by someone who has an data analytics background, who just as a personal favor has reviewed it to see, assuming we could get a good number of respondents, would this survey yield results that, with these questions formulated this way, would this yield the results that we're looking for? So I'm gonna just kind of go through it, and we can have conversation around it as I go, if there are ideas folks have. But it seemed like one of the things that was cost prohibitive was having a survey consultant come in and work with us intensely around, like, let's develop from zero all of the questions. So giving a survey consultant a set of questions and having them implement it would be something we think we can get done with the $12,000 we have. Doing like 3 or 4 meetings with a subcommittee was what was going to tip us into the realm of we are exceeding the $12,000. So I thought that what I would do is to bring a draft survey to the working group for review and discussion. And there are some areas where I will need to that this iteration of the survey would need a little bit of fleshing out, and I'll show you that later. And I would like to engage one of you in helping with that task. So does that make sense to everybody where we're going? So let me just get started. So the first section at the top of the screen here, is it big enough for folks? I fear if we make it too much bigger, it's not going to all fit on the screen. But this first section, the public library overview, the idea here is that each public library in the state, both municipal and incorporated and community, all of the public libraries would fill this out, there would be one survey per library. The director would be the person completing the survey. And we would collect this information: the public library name, the name of the library director completing the survey, and the county that the library's in. There are a couple of libraries with similar names, and so the county information would just help us make sure we've got the right public library to match with existing data that's in our holdings already, rather than getting some of this information through this survey and making it burdensome for folks. If we have the Craftsbury Public Library up here, then we can pull from the data set we already have in the department the exact size of the population served based on the great work that Josh has already done, and then the type of library. And then if it's a rural or urban library setting. My recommendation is that we look at where the library is located. So a library that is physically in a city center that serves, and the city itself is more than 25,000 people, that would be more of an urban set. A very generous definition of urban, but this aligns with this aligns pretty well with the small and rural ALA breakdowns. So a library that is serving that is located in a town that has fewer than 25,000 people would be in the rural category versus instead of the urban category. But this would all be coded consistently based on the existing information the department already has. So it wouldn't be as confusing for the library directors filling out the survey. They would really just get to say who they are. I'm realizing right now that we should get their contact information. I forgot to do that, so that if there was confusing information, that the survey consultant could go back to that person and clarify and ask follow-up questions potentially. Does this top part make sense to folks? Does it sound like an okay approach to take? Right now I can see absolutely none of you, by the way.
Sorry, my thumb was waving in an upward direction. Yes, that looks great.
Okay.
I would have a question.
Yes, I like it.
Would it be required to have the library director complete the survey, or to have the library director determine who completes the survey? I don't know if that would make a difference.
The survey will be sent to library directors. They could delegate it, but I would like the library director to submit it.
Okay.
I think that somebody else could gather the data, and I don't know. To us, and I'm going to call on Josh for a second. Josh, do we require that the library director complete the PLS? Usually, like for the PLS itself, for the whole state, Josh is doing all of the work, but I certify it. So in the same way, I really want to be sure that the library director has reviewed the submissions and reviewed what's put down here, that it's not just, oh, I didn't get to this. Susie, can you do it? And now Susie's like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. And we have some not great data.
Similarly to your suggestion, the way it works with the annual report is that there's a spot at the end where the director certifies the data. So we could.
And if we had a question from the consultant, they would go, Josh, when you're following up on the PLS, you reach out to the director for the follow-up, correct?
Typically, if someone reaches out to me, I will probably just respond, whether they're the director or someone else. But but usually, most of it goes through mostly goes to the directors, I would say.
Yeah.
And I would reach out to the director initially.
And if you had say you got some really different response from a library, like they've submitted already, and you're reviewing the data set and you're like, well, this one doesn't make any sense, you would call the director or email the director for clarification and corrections, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so
it may be a non-issue as well. I know in the past when I was not director, I've been asked to do this similar work because it was more in my comfort level than the director's comfort level. So I don't know if there's a way to word it so that the director is the person who's ultimately responsible, but not necessarily completing. And perhaps I'm overthinking it. I can do that.
Well, I'm thinking too, in San Francisco, there were sections of the California PLS that I filled out because it was my division, but I filled it out within a certain frame, within like a spreadsheet that then was transferred over and submitted through the one director, through the director or the city librarian's office. And I think probably that's how we would advise people to do it, so that the director really is being asked to see this and verify the information. So I expect this would be an online tool, and that one of the things that we really want to be sure of is that we're getting it from the person who has the knowledge of it, who's responsible for the oversight and for ensuring staffing and for having that information. It just seems like that's really important. And if somebody else filled it out and didn't quite do it right, then it just compromises the data set. The director should at least proofread it, and that transferring it over is maybe where they are doing that.
Catherine, both Janet and Andy have got their hands up.
Oh, thank you. Wendy, I really appreciate that. So let's call on Andy.
Hello. I'm just trying to sort this out in my head. First thing is a quick question that maybe is best for Josh, but what's, when you send out a survey, what's the return rate? You don't need to answer it now, but I asked that question of, is there a need to incentivize responses, or will people just do it? No need to answer that right now. I just wanted to put that out there before I forgot it.
Let's call on Josh for that answer, because he can easily provide that right now. He knows that one.
So that varies from year to year, but we have 185-ish public libraries, and our response, we usually get about 145 to 150 responses.
So about 80%.
It's like the best response rate in the history of surveys.
It
really is.
It's really a good response rate, but in the context of the national response rate for this particular, the PLS, we are not in the highest bunch at all. Some states, the incentive, the carrot, is that they will only give state aid to those libraries that respond. We don't have state aid. There are other libraries, other state libraries that also don't have state aid and also have higher rates than us. I'm very curious what they're doing to get such high return rates. Josh, I hope I'm not misrepresenting us.
No, I think that's correct. I would have to dig into it pretty further to really figure it out. A lot of states have when they're collecting, have the benefit of there being a lot of systems that they are drawing from. And we having so many small libraries, that's not the case, but there definitely could be states who have as many small libraries as us and might have a higher rate. So I would have to look into that further to get any more useful info.
I do think that our working group needs to, we will need to really pound the pavement and explain why we need a high response rate. We will need to be very active in promoting the completion of this survey. We have members of the department here, and Jeanette and Tom particularly. I want to include them in this conversation because they have so much knowledge of the department's history with surveys and how we do this well. And so I want to invite them to participate. I'd like to invite them to participate in this discussion as well. if they have something that they want to share, Jeanette Schaefer and Tom McMurdo, you could put your hands up and Wendy, can you help me with telling me whose hand is up? Because I really am operating kind of in a strange tunnel right now when I'm screen sharing.
My other point, just quickly, is I'm from what I'm hearing, it makes sense to me to make a distinction between potentially the person filling out the survey and the one certifying it. So if you all who have the practical experience with this think it makes sense to structure that first part from the name and role of staff member completing the survey, name and role of director certifying the survey, and then expect the directorial certification at the end, that might make more sense. My guess is that at least in larger libraries it's going to be delegated anyway.
Well, the data collection will be delegated. The thing I'm a little concerned about is adding complexity to the submission. and that's, I guess, Josh, with the PLS, we have a data tool and the library has a login. This is not going to go through our state library data tool. This is going to be administered by the survey consultant and housed on their data collection tool. So I think logistically, we want to send one survey to one email and get one response from that one email with a unique survey access code for that one email. And so that's why I'm concerned about the delegating. Because otherwise, then they're sharing the access code. It shouldn't work coming from another person. It should have, do you see what I mean? Because we're trying to get one response for each library and from the specific person, rather than like, if I think my library, if I'm a community member and I know the survey's going on and somehow I'm a trustee who somehow got a hold of the code, I fill it out, and then actually my library director filled it out two, and now we have two of the surveys. Like we're trying to get a one person point of contact.
Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe we should just emphasize how it's important to the working group, or I think it's important that the library director be responsible for filling this survey out. And that's just a part of the communication that we provide.
Yeah. We could also post a survey, like a spreadsheet where they can have somebody gather the information for them to then enter.
Yeah.
So that they're not going in blind and it's like they need to know it's always easiest to do the survey for me if I gather the information in advance and then just copy and paste over the data into the correct cells.
Kathy, Jeanette has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Jeanette Bear or Jeanette Schaefer?
Jeanette Schaefer.
Jeanette Schaefer.
If I might just add a technical thing, Kathy, the public library name, we are able to also offer a drop-down menu for that. We've been testing that with the ARPA grants, and that's been working really well. That helps a lot with the data integrity and sort of the lack of confusion. And then as far as the certification and the who gets to fill it out, I think the access code is a really good idea. I don't know that this really rises to the level of a need for certification. This specific one, PLS is a little different, but this survey I think is not at that level. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, for that. So the access code should be adequate where it can only be submitted one time. That's a really great idea. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
And this is Jeanette Bear. I'm not sure how you, the equivalent of raising your hand if you're here by phone.
Just do what you're doing. I'd rather have people jump in and be less formal with getting engagement. So please just go for it.
I just want to add from a public library director's standpoint on completing the surveys, in participating in the surveys, is that I obviously had erroneous information that I felt that being able to take advantage of interlibrary loan and any grants through the Department of Libraries, that was a condition of those.
Yeah, let me speak to that. So the current standards for public libraries date to 1986, and it does state in there that the department may provide more services. I'm not phrasing this exactly right, but the gist of it is that the department may decide to provide the most services to those libraries that participate in surveys in the survey. That's my recollection. Unfortunately, I'm not in my office and I don't have my folder right here to read from it, but I think that at times that has been the case. I do think that there's very good alignment between the 145 who are applying for things regularly and the 145 submitting the PLS and those who are applying for the grants. So for example, for summer reading, we don't receive, which is a non-competitive $300. This year was a non-competitive $300 grant. We didn't receive 185 requests for that. We received something that was closer to the total number of respondents on the survey.
Oh, okay.
We haven't been hard with that, but could be. And that could be a recommendation of the working group that, I mean, really, if we're trying to get survey compliance, and we're trying to get the data so we can help everyone, the working group could say, well, the department should only give to these people. The challenge in that, the thing I want to just remind everybody of is that some of our libraries are very small and that they really have limited capacity. And then the administrative burden, is it fair to the community not to give them the resources because somebody was overwhelmed and didn't meet the survey deadline?
No, it is quite the.
Yeah, Jeanette?
Oh, I just said it's quite the cudgel that, if I don't get this done, we're not eligible for services.
Yeah, and I do think that some states have said things like you must fill out the PLS survey in order to get LSTA grants to states funding. That is a state requirement. That is not a requirement. The LSTA grants to states program has no such requirement. So
Kathy,
yeah.
sorry. I have the language in front of me in the 86 standards if you'd like for me to read it.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that.
Meeting standards is purely voluntary. The Department of Libraries provides services to all public libraries, whether they meet standards or not. It may, however, offer additional services to those public libraries which meet standards. The department is eager to assist libraries in meeting standards and, once they are met, in continuing self-evaluation. So that's the language from the 1986 standards, which are in force.
And Tom, is there anything about completing surveys that's actually called out in the standards?
Not that I'm seeing. Let me get back to you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that too. So, Jeanette, it may be that the connection of the surveys to the funding is one that was sort of inferred but not stated at some points. But at this point, we haven't been linking it in that way. But we do know that we have really good engagement in the surveys, as Josh shared, with around 80%, and that we tend to see the same folks participating in everything. So we've got those kind of hard nuts to crack where we're really trying to make inroads to get everybody availing themselves of the opportunities for funding and participating in the surveys.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other?
There's no mention of the survey in the standards. Filling out the PLS is important for us to get our funding, which means services for libraries. So
yeah, I think it helps all of us to have those surveys completed, and really getting people to understand that is important, both for surveys of the working group and surveys of the department. Are there any other hands raised around section 1? Okay, so I'm going to move to section 2. Now, as you're looking at section 2, I want to explain how it's been set up. Basically, there are a number of job titles listed, and then the same set of questions for all of the job titles. These, as you're looking at these job titles, you might think, what the heck is a library assistant or library clerk? We don't call them that, or we have this other type of position. So the titles are titles that have been used by in other states by professional organizations primarily, and then also align with the job titles that are in the in many cases align with the occupational handbook, that is a federal resource. So I know that these may not exactly align with position titles at different libraries in Vermont. And so the hope is that this position description that we will offline, that one of the members of our group can insert the description of duties associated with these various things, with these various titles, so that there's a common description. So the person says, well, I don't have a library assistant, or a library clerk, I have a shelver, I have a page, I have whatever they call it. And then they see, oh, this is what the duties are. So this is just like a description. There's the people in the community won't be asked to describe it. We will give them a description of the duties so that they can align with, okay, this thing here is what we call X in Pomfret. So I'll answer this for what we call X. Does that make any sense to you all?
It makes sense, except for then when I take it with, is that going to be for everyone in that position? So let's go back with the pages. You have 3 pages, but one hasn't completed high school yet, and the other one has.
Let me go through one of them first, okay, and then maybe I'll answer that. As I'm looking at this, if this is what we're providing, I immediately see that the best thing to do is to say, this is the info we're providing, and to start with 1A. So I'm just going to correct this one, and we'll assume the rest of them are corrected too. There's nothing like doing something in front of a group that made total sense to you in your total sense to you before. There's nothing like doing something in a group and having everybody see the work to make you notice areas for improvement. So these aren't the educational 1A, educational requirements of the position. These are the requirements if you posted the position. They're not the qualifications of the individual in the position. So if you have no educational requirements, or a person who's a page, then these would be check boxes. So there should be one answer for this. Oh no, this would be a drop-down menu. There should be one drop-down menu, and there should be just one thing that you select on it. So I would say if you hire high school students, then there's not an educational requirement, unless we want to add something that is completion of 8th grade. If we think that we could add that. But this list of educational requirements will continue for every single one of them. So obviously you might have a person, and I definitely have supervised people who have a master's degree in library science who are shelvers with their pages. They want to break into the library system, and they will take any job that they can take, and they start as a part-time page, but they have a master's of library science. I saw that frequently in San Francisco. That wouldn't, for this question, the library director would say the actual high school or GED requirement. They wouldn't say master's in library science, even if all of the pages at their library were people who had a PhD. They would say high school or GED, because that's the requirement. So you would have one answer for the position requirements, how it would be posted, how it has been posted. Jeanette Schaefer asked me to call it what it's actually called, which is Certificate of Public Librarianship. So that needs to be updated in all of them going down, moving forward. So I'm just highlighting that word so that we can be sure to copy and paste it and fix it up. For folks who, particularly for library directors, do you think it's a good idea to say completion of middle school? Or, I mean, do you think that there are lots of folks in high school who the requirement is that you be a high school student to be in any position in your library? Is there a certain position that you have a requirement that you like? Should we add something between no educational requirements and high school or GED?
I think this is good.
Okay. And then moving to 1B, you count the total number of bodies. How many bodies are there? So this would include part-time, full-time, as many people as are paid to do this job. This next one, 1C, is the total number of hours worked weekly by the library assistant or library clerk positions. The reason that I am recommending we do the number of positions and the number of hours is because when we say the term FTE, even in the department, Josh and I have had some really confusing conversations recently where it's like, wait, like I think an FTE is 40 hours a week. Because in the environments that I've worked in recently, that's been the requirement. But then I think back, and when I worked in New Jersey, the FTE was 37.5 at the library system I worked at. And then Josh was sharing with me, well, the IRS says it's anything over, I think, 30 or 32. And so just having, this is how many humans we have, and this is how many hours they work. We're then regularizing the report. It's not subjective. Right now with an FTE count, what we're hearing is, oh, I have 3 FTEs. And in one library, that may mean they have 3 people working 32 hours a week. And in another library, it may be that they have 3 people working 40 hours a week. So this is a way to get the number of positions and the number of total hours. And then we can compare apples and apples from institution to institution. Does that make sense to folks?
Yes.
And then, okay, great. And then the average hourly rate of pay for the people in that position. If there's just one person in that position, what an easy question to answer. The director answers the rate of pay for the one library assistant or library clerk. If there are 3, they do an average. And then we know there are 3 of them, they have an average of this, and they work this many total hours. That tells us the staffing capacity in the classification at the institution. There may be 0 of some of these things at institutions. There may be one person who's wearing all the hats. They usually have one title, though. I want to check on something really basic, and I need help here. In the environment that I worked in most recently, a library assistant or library clerk were 2 different things. Or maybe not. There was no library clerk. There were pages and there were library assistants. In Vermont libraries, should we have a separate thing for someone who just shelves the books, a shelver or a page position? Should we add that here? Or is everybody, if you're shelving the books, you're also checking them out?
At our library, we have pages who only are pages, and then we have library clerks that are people who check out books.
Okay.
If I could jump in here.
Yeah.
I believe in many small libraries, the page duties are pretty much filled with volunteers, that it's not a paid staff position.
Okay. Well, we've got a position, we've got some volunteer information down below, but if these are paid people, then we would put them up at the top.
Right.
I'm going to put the word paid here. I don't know how we should do that. Well, let's think about that. Okay, so we can add the person who strictly shelves, doesn't go and stand at the desk, doesn't check out an item, doesn't refer a question, just does shelving. The library clerk, this could be inclusive of the paging and shelving and also of the other duties. Because I think that there are a lot of locations where that's probably going on. Usually the way this would work is anybody in, like the technical assistant could do the library assistant or the shelving as well, right? But it's like they'll start with the least expansive duties and move up. So the next one that I put down here is the library technical assistant. And then there's also a library technician. These are often hard to parse between. So the description of duties, we could combine these potentially. And we would want to be very careful in the description of duties to explain what the difference is. For Vermont libraries, do you all feel like this is too many to split it out, to distinguish between the technical assistant and the library technician is like a distinction that doesn't exist?
Yeah, I think that's kind of splitting hairs.
Okay. So we can pull this one up. Yeah. And we can remove this one. Hi, Kelly. By the way, thanks for joining us.
Hello, sorry I was a little bit later than I expected.
That's okay. So for anybody who's watching the video later, that's Kelly McCagg, and she's with us. Kelly, did I say your last name correctly? I always second guess myself.
Yes, you did.
Great. Okay. Thanks for being here. Okay, so the circulation positions, do these three positions, library page or shelver, library assistant or library clerk, library technical assistant or library technician, do those cover all the positions? Should we add a circulation supervisor position, perhaps? I know some folks serve in that role.
Yes, I do.
I know. So let's add a circulation. By the way, I have never used Times New Roman on this particular document, but my God, it keeps defaulting to Times New Roman, and it's driving me nuts. So we'll add circulation supervisor. And I think a great person to help us with that addition of the description would be Wendy. Okay, so then we'll use all these same questions, but down in the circulation supervisor section, just as we'll add them all to shelver. Adult services librarian. So let me go over the librarians. I broke them into three categories: adult services librarian, children's or youth services librarian, and teen services librarian. There may be other categories I'm not getting, and so I want to check. What do you think of those librarian categories for public libraries in Vermont? Does that encompass the general breakdowns we see?
Yes, I don't know that there are many libraries that have those three different sets of breakdown, but yeah, it covers everybody.
We have all three.
Ooh,
lucky ducks. Let's see. I'm just trying to clean up a little bit as I go so I don't forget things. Okay, so then I know many libraries have supervising librarians. The larger libraries have that distinction, which seems like it is important to make because it's taking on a managerial role, but not the director. And I also think I just visited, I just visited the Fletcher Free last week, and I know that the largest libraries have assistant directors. Again, every library won't have these things, but we want it to be one survey that, you'll just, if you're a library director and you don't have that, you're just going to say 0. We don't have that. It's going to feel a little sad for the one-person libraries where it's like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Me, I do it all.
I think some good wording to make sure that it's clear to people how they're supposed to fill it out would be helpful. I know for myself, I'm kind of feeling in the weeds in terms of, well, I have staff members who do a whole lot of those different things. So which one do I choose? Because they're this, this, and this. So just some clear guidance on how to make those decisions would be good, and not to fill it out. If I have one person who's the shelver and the assistant director and the technical services librarian, I'm not filling them out 3 times. I just fill it out once, and I just have to make a choice. What are they?
Yeah, let me put down a note here. No, each position should only fall within one of the classification categories.
Do you mean position or do you mean person?
Each staff member should only be placed within one of the classification categories. Directors should select the best title, the best position, the best category for each position based on the title of the position. We're going to add a comments section. Additional information can be provided in the comments field. For example, if the assistant director is also performing duties of the is also the children's librarian. They should be put into the assistant director area, but the additional comments should reflect their other duties. So for each of these, we should add, I'm going to go up to the top to add it there. Additional duties text box. And we can refine this a little bit. And I think what we're trying to do, the survey consultant can help us with some of this. We're trying to give them something that's like pretty far along so that they aren't doing all of this work and charging us an arm and a leg for the parts that we could do ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Susan, does that note, that kind of clarifying note help? I'm sure we can refine it further.
Whoops, sorry, I forgot I was muted. Yes, I think that's very helpful.
So we'll say this: additional information about duties performed outside the scope of that position title, that position should be provided in the comments field. Okay.
So one question I have, I'm not sure perhaps rather than trying to get everything else listed in the comments field, because what are we actually going to do with that? Maybe it's just an acknowledgement that each library is unique, and it's okay. Only answer it once per person, per staff member. And we recognize that not all positions will be perfectly aligned with the positions that we're providing. I don't, worded better than that, but something just to say, we get it. It doesn't always fit exactly. Yes,
I think it's good. Why not get the note if somebody wants to take the time to say, oh, I'm the director and I also do 3 story times a week and I also do blah, 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 that we may not be able to, we'll leave it to the survey consultant to figure out, can they use that data? If they want to fill it out, they can provide the extra comments. We could change it to May.
I think the extra comments would be good, because it will, I'm just thinking of our library, where you're going to put me in as the circulation supervisor, and we're not going to list a cataloger because that's my other job.
Oh my gosh, we didn't put in cataloger. What's wrong with us?
Well, you've got the technical services. You've got technical services. So
yeah, but the technical services at the national level, it means something else.
Okay.
Potentially. So we might want to say, we might want to do cataloger.
Yeah.
I think we should probably add just
yeah, in my position, you're going to add circulation supervisor, and I'm going to be a full-time person, and I'm just me. And then there's going to be no cataloger in the library. And you're going to say, that's strange. How do they manage to get the books catalogued? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's put cataloger, because there are libraries that have a dedicated cataloger. And if that's the best place to put the person, that's the best place to put the person. And in your case, we would put you in supervising, circulation supervisor. And we would have that as an additional note that you're doing this role and that role. Okay, so now assistant director, library director, and then there are student workers or paid interns potentially. And then there's this big group of unpaid volunteers, student workers, or interns. And this, of course, there's no question about the average hourly rate of pay. They're unpaid. And then we have some libraries that are large and they have custodial or facilities staff that are paid by the library. Some libraries, the director is taking the garbage out and cleaning the bathroom. Some libraries, there's a custodian. So having the capacity to count those facilities helpers here.
Could we back up one step to volunteers again?
Yes, absolutely. That's a big one.
In some libraries, it's not just shelving the books and greeting people at the door. For instance, the person who serves as primary cataloger in our library is a volunteer. And I think it's important to differentiate just what all jobs volunteers are filling, and perhaps what value that is towards the library budget, to not have a paid person doing those, particularly the technical jobs.
You know, that's a good point. Maybe we could do a drop down menu, or not a drop down, not radio buttons where it's one thing, the check boxes. Checkbox list of duties performed by volunteers. This could be shelving, cataloging, reference, programming, youth programming, IT.
in my small library, I have an IT volunteer that manages our COHA system. We are an independent COHA library, and so rather than spending hundreds of dollars, if not thousands a year, we have that as a volunteer position.
We could include things like legal counsel, human resources, support, who knows what people are using volunteers for. Everything that's italicized, I'm going to need somebody to volunteer to help with, by the way. So, and anyway, I guess I don't want to be, I need some, I feel like it would be good to have another human help with fleshing this out. But I like that. Do you all like the idea of the checkbox with the duties? Does that sound reasonable? Because it's pretty broad. And we could even have another with a text box.
Well, yes, and an other option so that we can collect the information about what all, volunteers are serving in libraries.
Mm-hmm. Public, what do we call it? Like public affairs, like publicity, marketing.
Right. Website maintenance, recycling.
Okay, so we don't have to do everything here. We'll get some more detail there in it.
Catherine, Janet Schaefer has a hand up.
Yeah, Jeanette?
Yeah, really quickly, volunteers are often involved in helping write grants as well.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Yeah, and other development roles. And then Joy, and you may still get down to this in other staff, but she also noted the programming librarians and community engagement librarians as well, if those are specific roles. But we may not want to go down the rabbit hole there.
Well, I feel like, okay, hold on.
Yeah, that's a good note about trustee work not being
because
included.
the trustees, they may be volunteering, but they're a trustee, and that's how the library has decided to do the thing, and they're doing it in their trustee role.
Yep.
So you were saying outreach?
Yeah, outreach and community engagement librarians, and then also the programming staff, which are often, adult services.
Well, I've got youth programming and adult programming.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Thank you. Okay. Do we feel good with this? Is not necessarily comprehensive, but it gives us a good jumping off point. And we should probably say performed. Uh-oh. We're getting to the end of our time on this topic, and we haven't yet gotten all the way through, and I really want to get all the way through. Are folks comfortable going to 11 on this, and then just so we can finish it and get it moving?
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll take a short break, and then we'll do our other topic. Okay, so custodial and facilities staff. And then other staff. There's something here that you have that most people don't have. You might have a dedicated paid, you might have a dedicated paid marketing professional. You might have a dedicated paid development person. These would fall in here. And you would tell the description here.
I wonder, oops, sorry. Oh, am I on? I wonder about bookkeeper. That's something that we've recently added, and it seems like a number of other libraries I've talked to have recently added that, but that may just be because that's what I'm looking for. So it's just a question.
Bookkeeper or finance staff, right? Is that it?
If people think that's necessary, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and they might not be on staff all the time. It could be that you have dedicated, you know, you have that resource. It's 10 hours a week. We pay them this much an hour. Whatever. I think we should put them in. Doesn't hurt.
There is with municipal libraries, the portion of the bookkeeping work that is actually done by the town treasurer, who, you know, physically writes the checks and keeps the books.
Mm-hmm.
I know our town is considered charging a portion of the town treasurer's salary to the library budget because of that. So I don't know what that would make them.
That
But
would
right
be
now-
a work order for, I'm not sure either. We have to think about that. It's like yeah, I mean, for example, in the department, we have finance staff, and we have some staff who do the financial work in our team. I would count them as our FTE, but I would count the cost of bookkeeping as a professional service that we pay for.
Mhm.
Staff employed by the library, not overhead costs incurred in operation of library. We need to think about that a little bit more. Okay, let's move to the benefit section so that we can try to keep on schedule. If I do want to say before we move to benefits, if you think of something and you want to see them added, email me directly with that information. We can't discuss. I've been the past week. I've been thinking a lot about open meeting law, and I received guidance specific to our department and agency of administration, and I want to just be sure to say, like, the group emails information in a guide to open meetings put out by the Secretary of State, revised in January 2019. We're still going by that. So we don't email the whole group if you have a comment on this. I'll share out this document after today's meeting. Send me back. I'll put you all in the BCC field. Send me back your comments individually. Don't loop in the whole group, please. And collective editing of online documents. The guidance from the Secretary of State is that we recommend that a quorum of a public body should not participate in collectively editing a document outside of a duly warned public meeting. So I'm not going to share this with you for you to put your comments onto. Does that make sense? What you'll do is you'll respond. You can put, I'm not going to have one shared document that we all put our comments on. You can individually put comments and strike through things and make recommendations, and then I'll have to slog through it and consolidate them. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
And Christopher, that is different sounding guidance than the two of us heard earlier in the week, and I did clarify with my legal counsel how we should be proceeding, just in case you're having a head exploding moment.
It is so interesting how it changes from moment to moment.
It really is, but I assure you that I got it from a very trusted legal advisor that I clarified, am I doing this right? And I want to just say, I want our group to be beyond reproach with how we are making our meetings accessible to the public and how we are complying with open meeting law, because it's so important to have a transparent process for the community, and everything that we decide is here on video and posted online, and all the meetings are noticed and warned, and subcommittee meetings, if we form a subcommittee, will be too.
It makes me grateful to be a 501c3 nonprofit and not a state agency.
Yeah, because it's hard to figure out how to get stuff done and be super fastidious with the compliance. Okay, so the benefits portion. This portion basically pulls out the different types of benefits: health, dental, paid leave, and retirement. those are the ones that I could think of. There may be others, and we can add other things in. And then for each of those asks a similar set of questions. Are any staff eligible for employer paid health benefits? Yes, then you move on and you answer more questions. If no, you just skip it. We don't have that here. The second question for the category is, how is eligibility for employer paid health benefits determined? So it could be that, and you're selecting everything that applies. Full-time staff are eligible, part-time staff are eligible. You can have both of those. There might be a library, I don't know. I feel like I've heard of libraries where like the director might get benefits, but nobody else gets benefits, or it might be position-based. I want to check with you all on, did I make that up? Like, are there libraries like that you know of that specific positions are eligible? I don't want this to be more complex than it needs to be. We could potentially pull this one out and just leave the other box and somebody writes in which
I would need
position.
that box.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll leave it there then.
I think, Kathy, I've experienced this a little bit as we've evolved our benefits packages. There have been mostly, it feels like eligibility is based on the number of hours worked, which is often either 20 or 30 or 32. But sometimes it feels like these rules are written for nonprofits just specifically to exclude certain kinds of positions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really big ethical issues around that. And we learned as well that there may be, in fact, legal issues around that. In my first couple of years, we redid our retirement benefits, for example, and a position had been deliberately excluded illegally. And we had to pay that employee back their health insurance benefits or their retirement benefits plus any interest they would have earned over the years that they were eligible, but not getting them.
Wow.
So that's just a little bit of an anecdote.
Yeah, but it seems like this
we all need to
bullet
be careful
3,
about that.
that sense is accurate, that there are some locations where this would be true, where you might have a full-timer who's in a specific position who's not getting the benefits. This is also that they're eligible. So there could be a situation where someone's eligible, but they're on their partner's benefit plan. So they're not,
right,
or their spouse, they're not getting them, but they're eligible for them. And we're trying to find out the eligibility, not necessarily the cost to the institution. Because I think we already have the benefits costs. Josh Muse might be able to confirm that, but I think we already have the total institution's benefit costs from the PLS.
Correct. That's a question in there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
Not really related to the survey, but if we end up providing any capacity building services at any particular time, or the Department of Libraries is doing that, that's a place where especially small nonprofits can get into really big issues that might not get noticed for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so moving to the next one, the employer paid dental, it's the same set of questions. And then employer paid leave benefits. So these could be sick pay, vacation pay, paid holiday, etc. There was I think Adrian Katz from the Board of Libraries had made a comment at a recent Board of Libraries meeting. Adrian also works at the Athenaeum and various other places. Adrian's a very busy human. And I believe is a trustee as well, library trustee. She had articulated something about how it would be good to know how many legal holidays libraries had, because it seems so inconsistent, especially like the department will close for a legal holiday and it's like some of the others are open and they're wondering where the heck we are. Do you think that this paid holiday captures it well enough? Or do you think we should separate out sick pay, vacation pay, personal leave from holiday leave? Does it matter that much? Or do we just want a total number of hours? I'm not hearing a lot of that it matters that much. So let's just leave it with paid leave benefits as inclusive of those things. should I add something up here? I just said personal leave. Do people actually get personal leave that's not sick pay or vacation pay? Like the non-specific, or I think the et cetera catches it, right?
We get personal days at our library.
We have staff that have been here a while that still get personal, but anybody that started 9 or 10 years ago, I think they changed it. It's just PTO. But we do have staff that have been here longer that get it.
Why don't I do this? Include all paid time off, PTO, including sick leave, vacation day, personal. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so this, just to get the directions out there. And then employer paid retirement benefits. Sort of same kind of questions like, are any staff eligible? And how is that determined? And how many of them are eligible and what percentage? And then, why did I? Oh, I broke it down here. Yeah, by part-time and full-time. Yeah. And then in case there's something else, I mean, talk about a lucky person. I used to get pet insurance through my employer. The value of the union.
I want that.
You know, it's funny. I actually was able to get a lot of different types of insurance in San Francisco, and I was very, very fortunate. And so there may be somebody who's receiving, you know, you paid for them, but they were negotiated. So it wasn't a free benefit. I want to clarify. I paid, but I had a giant group rate that was negotiated because we were such a large unit of workers. I don't know if there are other benefits out there that folks have.
Kathy,
Yeah.
I wonder if it's worth breaking out, just because it's such a big public discussion right now, breaking out paid family leave and disability, short-term and long-term.
Okay, great idea. I'll just add those in and we'll do the same types of question structure as above. And then in case we missed something and somebody gets something awesome.
A question that comes up for me, and perhaps this isn't something that is worthwhile putting in the survey for everyone. What about a stipend in lieu of? I don't know how common that is. But for instance, I don't get health insurance and I do get this stipend, which is taxed. It's not considered my pay, but it's treated like pay. I'm not sure where I'd put that.
I don't know either.
And I don't know if I'm the only one in the state, which is certainly, like, I don't know how common that is.
Yeah.
I have heard of that. Librarians, particularly library directors, that get this bonus on the side towards insurance.
So we just add it in the other paid benefits or stipends. So you would say no up at the top, maybe a person who doesn't receive employer health benefits that are paid directly. You would say no, but then when you get down here, you would list
Yeah.
things that you receive.
Yep.
Okay. And then I'm going to put a note down here that the department can provide oh my gosh, I can't even type anymore. I moved my split mouse and I can't figure it out. Department will provide macro data on benefits from PLS survey. I should just, why am I saying macro data? Where am I from? Sometimes I say the weirdest things. Department will provide total benefits cost data from PLS survey. Josh, does that sound feasible? I feel terrible. Josh is like possibly multitasking and doing other things. And I'm like, Josh, pay attention.
No, that seems good.
You're always there when I call on you. Thank you, Josh. Okay. Is there
Okay,
anything?
can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What about unemployment insurance?
Great idea. Is it? Is this, hold on, employer paid unemployment insurance, right?
Well, it's I think it also comes, I think it's an employer and employee paid, isn't it? I'm not sure.
Well, we'll do the same structure as above, so we'll get a percentage. Right? So if you receive it, then we'll have that same structure, like what percentage is paid by the employer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's not a short survey, but I think with the repetition aspects, it's less painful than it could be. Does it feel objective enough that we're reporting on real known things? Versus like, what do you think you would charge if it was, because like the New Jersey Library Association survey, Lucy and I were looking at it, and it was a lot of that kind of, if you had to fill your position today, what would it be? And it's like, that's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's just current, like current feels safer and less subjective. We're just trying to get some objective data. Okay. Whew. All right, it's 11 o'clock now. I need a quick break, and I'm sure some of you do too. Rather than doing the full 15-minute break that we had put in the calendar, is a 5-minute break sufficient for folks to quickly do things? Should we take the 10-minute break or just do the full 15? I'm just concerned about like, how do we fit the rest of the agenda in here this morning?
5 fine with me.
Okay, let's do a 5-minute break and reconvene at 11:06. Okay, thank you. Okay, as folks return from their brief breaks, if you could either chat that you're back, working group members, chat that you're back, or come on screen for a second, that would be great. Now I want to read Wendy's t-shirt. I'm so curious what it's about. I can't hear you. Let me unmute you. Can't unmute her.
So we have this talk.
Those who shouldn't, those who say it can't be done shouldn't interrupt the people that are doing it.
That's perfect. I love it. Welcome back, everybody. I think we still got folks joining us, but it looks like Maria Avery is here now. So Maria, I imagine you came in during the past topic, and thanks for joining us. Kelly McCagg is back, and Christopher's back, and Karen is on screen, and so is Susan and Wendy. So in the interest of time, let's jump into, oh, Andy's stuck in the lobby. Andy's joining us. In the interest of time, let's jump right into our next meeting agenda topic, which is to, hi Andy, which is to potentially add a meeting on the topic of intellectual freedom to the working group's calendar. I have to admit, I've been it's been hard for me to do some calendaring stuff because I've been on the road for work a lot, and it's not my forte. I'm going to just be frank. We've got someone joining us in the department on Monday as our executive assistant, but I thought it might just be easier to ask folks, would you prefer to hold a meeting in February, to add a meeting to our calendars in February, or to add a meeting to our calendars in April? Because last meeting, people said that they wanted to add the topic of intellectual freedom. In February, the two dates that I'm available to chair are the 10th or the 17th. And in April, we could do it on the 4th. This would be a special meeting, and it would be in addition to all of the other things we're adding to the calendar. But it had sounded like this was a topic people wanted to include in our scope of work. So February or April?
For me, February would be better. April smacks of being at the end of the semester.
Okay. Do we want to try how about February 17th? Can I check with folks if that works for them? Because that gives us the most time we can. I'm not available on the last February of the month because that's the weekend of my ice swimming, and I've decided to prioritize self-care and go ice swimming.
Good.
Andy here, can do.
Okay, so February 17th.
Yep, February 17th can work for me.
Great. We will add that to the calendar, and we need to notice this special meeting because it's not part of our recurring meeting series. February 17th. Okay, and now I want to, oh, Maria Avery is typing and Christopher's typing. Good, here says Christopher. Great, okay.
Yeah, I was just saying the same. Works for me.
Wonderful, great. I do think I will need some help with agenda building. I think part of what the struggle for me, the struggle is real, but it sometimes feels like the working group stuff is happening in the public meeting context, which is true. But I'd really like working group members to help identify guests to invite on this topic as far as experts in the community. And we are able to email about, oh, Christopher's offering to help with that in the chat, which is great. We are absolutely able to work on agenda building together. I think sometimes I'm running and it's like, how do I get this out 48 hours in advance? And I'm struggling with it. And I need to engage you all more in the agenda building, which is something we can email about, to suggesting folks to invite and building the agenda together. If somebody wanted to take on the agenda, if somebody in our team is really an expert in this topic and wants to serve as the point person, or any other topic and wants to serve as a point person on it, I would appreciate all the help I can get, because we've got a lot going on in the department that's sort of new and exciting and extra work. And so it's getting a little tough to wrangle it all with the monthly meetings. So just connect with me offline if you want to take on something. And Christopher is offering to be point on this, which is awesome. And I think a great role with your experience, Christopher, and your contacts in the community. So, okay, Christopher will be the point person for the Intellectual Freedom meeting on February 17th. Awesome. I don't know if you can hear, but the small child downstairs is now playing the piano. So I'm going to try not to get distracted and move to the next.
Kathy.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm taking a somewhat extended self-care break over the holidays.
Okay.
So I probably won't get started on agenda building until around about Martin Luther King Day, if that's okay.
Okay. That sounds okay. And what I'll do in the meantime is our team in the department will do our normal, like, who are we thinking of and what can we do? And we can put out a call for public comment. But then that could be kind of in progress, and I can hand that to you if we start it ahead of when you get back. Great. Okay, so let's move now to our programming overview by Department of Libraries staff. I understand that this morning we have a couple of folks who are about to hop on and share a PowerPoint with you. The PowerPoint is available if you want to follow along at home or print it out. It's available in PDF format. It's on the working group's webpage. And I'm going to turn it over to Josh Muse, Jonathan Clark, and Jeanette Schaefer. Did I get all of you? Everybody who's doing it? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Hopefully it is pulling up PowerPoint for y'all.
And timing wise, I think we're getting started late on your topic. So just noting that it's about 11:15 right now. Jeanette, remind me, how many minutes were you planning for the presentation so that I can make sure to give you cues that so that we save time for questions and answers from the community.
Yeah, I don't think we will need more than 20 minutes. It'll probably be faster.
Okay, so hopefully I'll just keep an eye on that. Thanks. And then we might be able to squish in the report writing quick topic at the end as well. So we'll see how that goes, but we want to be sure what's important is to get your report and then questions from the working group.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So we're going to do a brief overview on programming at Vermont Public Libraries as we see, at least initially, we're going to use stats from the annual report, the Public Library Survey. So here's some what we're going to talk about, and we're going to take it in chunks, so you'll get to hear from all three of us. So I'm starting with the annual report information. So this is stuff that comes from submitted to the annual report. First off, it's got the usual caveats for annual report data. It is based on people who respond, which again, last time around was 145 out of 185 libraries. So pretty good turnout, but not getting everyone. It also, there is some, because of fiscal years, there are a number of different fiscal years in effect. And so that means that some people are covering different parts of the pandemic. That's the most important piece. So we are seeing data that may be covering, let's see, calendar 2020, or maybe covering July 2020 to June 2021. As we recall, that those numbers are going to look somewhat different. So anyway, this is a little bit of a weird year as well. But we wanted to break down what you're seeing, what the kind of programs are based on those stats. Here we have a pie chart showing ages, the age ranges of the programs. This is of age of the program is targeting, not necessarily the age of the people who are attending the programs. So IMLS breaks it down into 0 through 5, 6 through 11, young adult, which is 12 to 18, adult, 19 plus, and general audience. General audience is programs typically that are intergenerational or that are really appeal to every single age demographic. So these are the, we had a total of over 9,800 programs reported last year, even in a down year. So programming is something that Vermont is, we'll show that in a second, is great at. I'm going to jump ahead. So this is one question that we started asking pretty recently, partially because of the pandemic. So things are broken into sort of 3 different locations in a sense. On-site, which is sort of the traditional thing, that was what we were mostly capturing before. Off-site, that can be any other location. It can be a sort of, you're going to a school, it can be the theater downtown, whatever it is, anywhere that is not on library property. And then virtual. Obviously, virtual numbers have ballooned for the last few years, particularly when libraries, in many cases, weren't able to do any on-site. So that's a breakdown of what the 9,800 looks like for last year. Again, I think next year's numbers will look different across the board as we are entering a much later part of the pandemic. Okay, so now we're going to show attendance. So same description. This is who is attending what age range program. We had 118,000 people attending programs over last year, which again, I think is great for a slightly down year during the pandemic. You'll see the breakdown of who is attending, and the kids programming makes up attendance is almost half of it, and then the other half is broken down into smaller chunks of adults and general audience. And now we'll same situation. So that's on-site, off-site, and virtual. How many people attend each of them? And you'll see that virtual attendance was great. We had really good numbers overall as people were trying to figure out how to do virtual programming. So I think that's really impressive. And then a breakdown on-site and off-site as well. In some cases, off-site was because there was no programming going on in the building. I'll just add that for what it's worth. One thing that, let's see, before I go to the next slide, one thing I'll add is that we didn't list recorded programming. And this is programming that either was live, but has been recorded and sat on YouTube or Facebook or something like that. Or it's programs that were just recorded initially, that were never live. And that we had just a smidge over 1,900 programs in that vein with over 47,000 views. So again, pretty good numbers, I think, all in all, as we were all figuring out how to do this. Okay, let's see. So here is a comparison using the IMLS Public Library Survey numbers of where Vermont lies with the other states. These numbers are, as it shows, per 1,000 population, 1,000 people. So it is per capita. Otherwise, we would be handicapped by how small our population is. But with that, we are number 1 in number of programs we're offering. You can see for Vermont, the number is 42.2 programs per 1,000 population, when the national average is only 11.26. Programming is something that overall Vermont does a great job with. And I think this really shows that we are in first place despite our size. You'll also see that the rest of New England is well represented in these numbers. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Attendance. So this is just attendance, same deal. Per capita attendance numbers are also really good. We are we're up at 660 per 1,000 people when the national average is 247. So again, very well ahead of the national average, and some of the same states. Some of the same states are at the top. I see we have a question. We can hop to that in 1 second, if that's okay. So we are going to show YA programs broken out. So again, the number of programs that we have for young adults are pretty good. The numbers are obviously smaller for YA, but we're in first place again with 2.66 programs per 1,000, and the national average is 1.17. We are well placed. The rest of New England is kind of in a similar boat, but so that is also good. However, this is where the numbers pop out a little bit. So program attendance for YA is we're still above the average, still not anything to sneeze at, but it's notably lower than first place, which is where we've been for the past few. We have ideas for why that might be the case. I think the geography is could be part of the problem. We have a ton of small libraries in a ton of small towns, and I think that could be part of it. But I think we can all kind of contemplate some other things that might be contributing factors as well. So that's where we're at for that. Do we want to? We had a question. Do we want to? Let's see. The question was.
Go ahead and
sorry.
address that before we move on.
Okay, that sounds good. So Christopher asked, yeah, basically the similar thing. Is this because of the size of our population we do well in per capita? I think there's something to be said for that. We do well in per capita. Also, from a public library perspective, we have more libraries per capita than in any other state, and I think that also puts us in a good spot to have good numbers on per capita. So I think it helps. There definitely are other states who are at the high end who are not necessarily as small as we are. It's not just you're not just seeing the small states, but I think that and the number of libraries I think certainly is an advantage we have for those. And I think unless there's any other questions for what we've shown before, I think we're going to hop to the next slide, which is factors that affect programming. And I think, Jeanette, were you or
Yep.
Jonathan? Yes,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to hop in there. Yeah, it was interesting for us to see that the youth attendance number down, and we were brainstorming a little bit, as Josh mentioned, what those factors could be. And I think a big factor is that a lot of our students don't go to school in the communities in which they live. So they basically are far away.
Yeah, specifically for middle school and high school. So that
right.
affects the young adult programming.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was an interesting thing. Of course, we don't have any information to back up if that is really why youth programming is less well attended, although still above average. So we wanted to look a little bit at the factors that affect the programming and that affect both the quality of the programming and just what libraries are able to provide in terms of programming. So the quality of the programming, and none of this is new for you all working on the ground in libraries. So this is just a summary of what we might need to consider when we're talking about improving the quality of programming and also just the quantity of what's available and the access to programming. So the IMLS funded an ALA study, the National Impact of Library Public Program Assessment Research Project, and this study identified 9 core library programming competencies. What you see here is sort of the soft skill side of programming competencies, which are sort of the knowledge and understanding of the community, what it is that they need, in particular, the community's interests. How can programming be delivered to meet the interests and needs? How do you reach underserved communities that have historically not taken advantage of programming? for whatever reasons, or that face challenges in access. Another soft skill here that they identify in the competencies are the interpersonal skills, how to communicate effectively and appropriately to all audiences to provide these services. And creativity is huge. And I think creativity is biggest probably in youth programming, and attracting teens to is one of the big factors in how teens could be attracted to programming as well. So then there's the content knowledge, which I think affects a lot of the libraries that have only one staff member or a part-time staff member, where that single person running a library can't be a subject expert in everything that they're trying to offer. And I think we're seeing that a lot in digital literacy, early literacy, teen programming, EDIA programming. So when you're a person who is the director, the cataloger, the adult programming person, you may not necessarily have the content knowledge that is needed to run some of those programs. So that's an issue for a lot of our small and rural libraries, where you can't really afford to have a youth services librarian. Again, none of this is new to any of you, but we just want to summarize it and get it out there in a more formal way. Then there's the sort of more organizational skills, the event planning skills, the outreach and marketing skills, the financial skills. Do you have the budget? And then finally, the evaluation skills as well. Are you able to use feedback and statistical and qualitative tools to measure program success and then make adjustments to inform your future programming as well? Again, this is a lot of stuff for one person or a part-time person to be able to do and to understand and really have those competencies. So next slide, please, Josh. Yeah. So when we talk about the competencies, I already addressed, specifically having the skills to offer programming, or having access to people with the expertise. So that's an alternative that I know a lot of libraries take advantage of. If they don't have their own expertise in a lot of these areas, they hopefully will have access to people with expertise in them. And then also the budget to pay them if they're paid. A lot of you rely on volunteers to provide the training and the programming in some specific areas that you may not know as much about. But again, the reliance on volunteers just goes so far as well. So staff capacity, I've already just mentioned that with, if you have to do marketing and just planning and getting the room ready and whatnot, staff capacity is huge, and being able to offer the programming and the statistics that Josh talked about. You're still offering, libraries are still offering a lot of programming. So however it is that libraries make this work, it's really impressive that we still come out really on top with the amount of programming that we have. Dedicated program spaces, we have noticed this especially during the pandemic, where our program spaces that may have been adequate previously were no longer adequate because of capacity, because of ventilation, and we had to move a lot of the programming outside. And what does the space outside look like? It's not just a matter of, just plunking everybody outside on the lawn. There has to be furniture, there have to be canopies, rain shelters, all of that. So dedicated program spaces is a huge challenge, especially in small libraries that are single room libraries often, or have really tiny side spaces for their programming as well. Flexible spaces. We know that modern libraries really rely on modular furniture that can be configured to moving it to accommodate programming. They can have movable wall space. Craftsberry, Susan, I was really impressed with your movable shelving, where you could just kind of move everything out of the way so that you could have your big program space smack in the middle of your space. So that is something that is really important in the future if you're thinking about, well, how can programming be enhanced? And spaces are huge and important, and have become more important after what we learned with the pandemic. Budget, of course, is always the thing that we have to consider. Are we able to provide high quality programming, and does our budget allow high quality programming there as well? So those are just some really practical considerations that we have to consider in addition to the competencies that lead to high quality programming. And what the statistics don't measure is the quality of the programs, unfortunately, but it's good to know what the competencies are as well, and to consider those. So I think I'm going to pass it off to Jonathan, who's going to do a bit of a spotlight on one of the programmings that many libraries do, most actually, and that gives everybody a lot of joy over the summer, and that keeps us all busy over the summer. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about summer programming. Again, it's a program that has a lot of impact on communities, and something that we have seen even in these last few years, just so much creativity and so much flexibility. And so we're going to highlight that a little bit. So if Josh, you can go to the next slide. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say too is that we were having a discussion. It was mentioned that this is kind of the fluffy part, it came up in the discussion this morning about the snow and it turning into sleet and freezing rain. And I said that my mantra is keep it fluffy, which I think it just applies all around. So we're going to keep it fluffy. So for 2022 summer programming, so we, aside from Josh's statistics, we send out a survey and we gather a lot of information about summer programming. So this is specific. So this is from that data that we got from the summer 2022 programming. And we heard from 134 libraries, 131 libraries that surveyed offered some kind of summer reading program. That means that there is a theme that we follow and that we provide support for around the CSLP theme, which last year was Oceans of Possibility. So many libraries follow that, but there are some other libraries who sort of do their own themes and do a variety of programs in a bunch of different ways. But 131 offered some kind of programming. And just to give you kind of a variety of what those look like, the target audience, there are programs for young children, 0 to 5. There are programs for school-age children, 6 to 12, and for teens. And there are also adult programs, which I kind of wanted to highlight the adult and multi-generational family programming, which I feel has been an area that has really increased in the last few years. There's been a lot more around that, which is really great. And then the types of programming offered has, again, really expanded, and especially with the pandemic. And we heard from libraries that offered grab-and-go programming during the summer, virtual programming, hybrid, outdoor, indoor, off-site. A lot of libraries serve the summer meal sites. So serving their communities in a whole bunch of different ways. And then we just want to mention that the Department of Libraries has been offering summer programming grants, which has been expanded and changed in the last few years. We were able to increase that to $300 this last year. And we also, 143 libraries is, as far as I'm aware, it's the most grants that we have given out. Shout out to Lucy, who helped make that happen, as well as a bunch of other people. And so we really are excited about that. And again, in the last couple of years, that has been expanded so that not only are those used to hire performers or programming that libraries might otherwise not be able to provide or to enhance their programming, but they're also able to purchase supplies, which does include evergreen items that can be used not only during the summer, but can stay at the libraries to use, such as 3D printers, Cricut machines, button makers, video tabletop games, a whole lot of variety, and libraries were really creative in how those grants were used. Okay, so Josh, if you can go to next slide here. So we got a whole bunch of really great testimonials about summer reading and the impact of it. I have highlighted a few here. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to, I have a couple of slides with them that will be available, and we will be sharing out more of this at some point from the highlights from what we got back. But I just wanted to share the one here on the right from Waterville Town Library that said, "This is the first time our library has had a summer reading program since before the pandemic. It was wonderful to see patrons get enthused about it, including our adult participants." And again, that was something that we've heard a lot this year, was the increase in adult programming and participation in those. Next slide, please, Josh. And then again, on this one, I'm just going to highlight the quote there on the left from Alice M. Ward. "Many people see how engaging and welcoming our library is to all age groups, and we are a true community partner for much more than books." And of course, that is true all the time for public libraries, but summer reading is really a highlight in a time when it does bring in folks that sometimes don't use the library otherwise. Josh, if you can go to the next slide. And so again, we received a lot of amazing photographs showing programming as well. These are just a few highlights from a celebration at Tunbridge, Burnham Library, showing one of their programs related specifically to the theme, which was Oceans of Possibilities. Latham Memorial Library, this was one of the programs that they brought in using the summer grant funds. And Guilford Library, this is a picture of one program they did that was a ukulele program, which they, as you can see, they did outside. And again, that was something that there were a lot of programs were done have been continued to be doing outside as well, and it has expanded what libraries are able to offer. So that's it. That's it for what I have.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Christopher, you're right. So Christopher put in the chat that YA folks are maybe also more engaged in their school library programming than their public library programming. Yeah, that's also, I think, part of that geographic location issue where they're at school all day and then they go home where they're not necessarily engaged with their local community resources as they would be with their school, where they spend most of the time.
Absolutely.
Any other questions we can answer? How are we doing on time, Kathy?
Time-wise, you're doing well. We have this is when we would do the questions. So I want to thank you for pulling together this presentation. It helps us to contextualize programming within the framework of the rest of the nation, the other states. And it's just really clear sort of where we are. I want to open it up to the working group. And I'd want to say too, Jeanette, Josh, and Jonathan, Karen, everybody who's been involved, Tanya, everybody who's been
and
involved,
Karen. Mm-hmm.
Tanya and Karen, everybody who's been involved in working on this, have really done a great job of gathering the data and sharing it in a way that I feel is really accessible, that easy to interact with and easy to engage with. So I'm going to open it up for working group questions, but just wanted to express my appreciation for the team behind the scenes, every meeting with engaging the department staff in this. There is quite a lot of effort that goes into it, and it is appreciated by the working group. So and by me personally. So thank you to the whole group that just presented and supported the presentation. Questions, comments? Remember, anything that's talked about in the chat thread isn't going to be in the recording. And so we need to get those things onto the record. So I know we've got a little bit in the chat thread that I think we've talked about already, but just working group members, remember, you can feel, we're a small group, you can feel free to unmute and just jump right in here. And you may hear my cat screaming in the background because it's getting near to when she wants food.
Kathy,
yeah.
In that spirit, I'd just like to say, go Canaan, for the record. The Alice Ward Library is an amazing resource in a very, very isolated part of Vermont, and they do such a great job.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree. And if you've never been to Canaan, you should put it on your list because you will see how remote it really is. Vermont is a small state, but Canaan is up there, out there.
You just drive and drive
Yep.
and drive and drive, and then you drive more.
Yep.
Yeah, I was lucky to get up there this summer and visit with them, and it was interesting how many times my cell phone decided I had left the country.
Yes.
They're not unique in that, but they're because I was also up in Derby Line and the Haskell Library. I had the same phenomenon, and within the same building. But it's kind of interesting to see the challenges of communication in that area, and then look at the.
It happens up by Swanton and
Yeah.
Highgate a lot too.
Yeah, I've often been in a friend's house in Alberg and been welcomed to Canada. But we do have libraries that are doing amazing things with programming despite limited resources and challenges of their facilities. I want to check with folks in the working group. Is there anything that you heard today, or thinking back to the discussion, or to the thinking back about programming? Are there any things that we might recommend or suggest? Are there any questions you have for Jeanette, Josh, Tom, other members of the department team about programming? Any thoughts coming to mind about recommendations you might want to make as a working group? There was one slide that Jeanette shared with the areas of consideration that seems like that might be the factors that affect programming and the areas of consideration. I think that those are some things that we really would want to think about for the recommendations. This is an area where libraries have definitely changed in the past 20 years, 30 years. The focus on the importance of community building through programming and learning through programming, and well, maybe the presentation was just so great that we don't have that many questions today. Okay. Well, I want to thank folks again. This is definitely helpful to supplement our report writing and what we have on the record. It supplements the testimony that we heard, the public comment from the library community. To me, it's always, we were talking in the department recently about how we want to have always kind of the data, the stories, and then some warm fuzzies. We like the warm fuzzies, and we don't mind a photo or two. So I feel like you all provided us with those things, and in conjunction with the conversations we had previously on programming, and also in conjunction with the public comment from the community on programming, this just rounds out the elements that we'll have available when it comes to report writing. So in the final 15 minutes, I don't know how we magically have gotten to the final 15 minutes and are going to, I don't know how that occurred, but it's great. We're going to move to our new agenda item 7, which we added at the beginning of the meeting, which is report writing. I have come to the realization that any free time on my personal Outlook calendar, my work Outlook calendar, any free time, it's as if it calls out to the void to be filled with emergencies and urgent things. And I know that that is that way for all of us. And I think that there was some notion that I, as the chair, would write these reports and bring them back to you, and it would be just so wonderful. And then there's the reality that, like, we talked about that months ago, and despite my best intentions, it's just not really happening that way. And so we are continuing at this fast clip of moving along with all of these new things. And we do have the recent meeting where we kind of crystallized our ideas and crystallized some recommendations and thoughts and thinking, which then somebody can go back and say, these are some of the things that we really want to include in the report. And then we have things like these wonderful reports from the department and from last month from agencies throughout the state. But we have to actually reserve time either individually with assignments that are distributed to many of us, not just one of us, or we have to form a subcommittee. Those are the only two choices I see in my mind that can possibly get us forward. So I'm going to outline the two choices I think we have. And if you have a third or a fourth or a seventh or a 36th choice, please bring them to me, but bring them to the group. I think the two options are either that we are going to assign writing of each topic to one specific individual and not all topics to the one individual, like one topic to Wendy, one topic to Christopher, one topic to Andy. Or, and by the way, I can't be that person. I've shown myself to have failed in this goal. My desire is there, my capacity is not. I do not have the capacity to do that, despite how much I want to help the group in that way. Or the second thing that we could potentially do is to form a report writing subcommittee. As a subcommittee, I have confirmed with legal counsel that a subcommittee of a public body, and it's clear even on like the first page of the open meeting law guidance from the Secretary of State, that the subcommittee would need to publicly notice their meetings. Open meeting law applies to the meetings of any committee or subcommittee that is created or empowered by a public body to do its work, no matter its size. So we would need to go through like forming a subcommittee on report writing. That subcommittee would meet at the date that we decided on, and then that the big group here, that the working group decided on, and then the subcommittee could set a regular recurring schedule for meetings. So then they would gather, and in a public meeting, which could be in person, there's no requirement that it be online. If people wanted to meet together and do the writing together in person, they could. They could do a hybrid meeting, or they could just do a plain old virtual meeting like we're doing right now today. They could then bring topics back to they would bring topics back to the working group, the pieces of the report that have been written for approval and discussion and whatnot. So I want to check with you all on these two ideas, see if there are any other ideas. Christopher has their hand raised, so Christopher, please.
I'll even turn on my camera for you. I actually really love the idea of not creating a subcommittee, but assigning chapters. But I would maybe make a friendly amendment to that. I think it would be really great if we went that route, if we started with a template and maybe an example of what each chapter or section needs to contain in a very specific way. That we want each chapter to have a statement of purpose or a statement of the problem, a series of 3 to 5 bullet pointed action steps, and a case study. And that we all know up front, if we're volunteering, if I'm volunteering to take on intellectual freedom, what exactly is expected of me. And I think we really want to bear in mind something that somebody brilliantly said at an earlier meeting, that this does not need to be a 100 or 200 page tome for the legislature. It can be a 10 to 15 page, nicely designed series of recommendations that is brief with the possibility of providing more to the legislature if they ask for more in the future, and they perhaps pay for it. I would also say that we could do a bigger version of this, but that does get us into the budget thing. And I would say, you know, most of the time when I see reports like this written, there's a budget for a writer.
Really?
And we don't have that. You know, for whatever reason, I don't know, but you know, when we did our ARPA report, we paid $5,000 or $6,000 to a writer to do the work.
Well, this is my first rodeo, and I wasn't aware of this writer thing. That sounds like a wonderful idea, a writer. Unfortunately,
for ARPA, just to be direct about
Yeah.
it was Catherine Sims, who's a state rep for Craftsbury, but also a nonprofit consultant in her day job, and we hired her to manage the grant process and to write the community report afterwards, and she did a fabulous job coming in on time and under budget.
One thought that I had as you were speaking, Christopher, is that a template that included an overview, really, I think the overview could be based on an overview that would be based on the report that the department has done on each of the topics. Then moving into, that includes statistics and data. Then we move into the section about what we heard from the community, and then we do the recommendations. That type of a format would be pretty easy to pull together. And I'm thinking now that if the department staff are about to groan as I say this, but if the department did the report, they would be the best ones to write the summary of their report. They might even have their talking points and notes to help formulate that. So if I'm wondering about the idea that what if my team and I developed the template and bring it back to our January meeting, potentially even with some summaries, some brief summaries of the presentations with the key salient points from those. And then we divvy them up. We assign them out in January. Is that, I feel like I saw a hand up and then I didn't see the hand anymore. The subcommittee approach to me feels like I might lose my mind, but it might be necessary. We might need to have, well, it's okay. We could always add additional special meetings for reviewing the things.
I think the template idea is excellent and would move this from a frightening sort of blob that I want to try to avoid at all costs to something that I feel like I could wrap my head around.
Yeah. And I think we talked about, Christopher mentioned this just now, and it had come up in the past that and Andy Kay said this to me once, the scope of this project and the duration of the project being relatively brief for a scope of that size, and the budget, which we've already pretty much peeled off and allocated to something else, not a report writer, result in us having a necessarily overview kind of temperature check. We are not going to be able to take deep dives into these things in these reports. We have limited scope, capacity, and expertise in each of the areas, despite great desire to support Vermont libraries. I think the tools offered and the time and the vast scope. You know, this isn't a report on one topic like early childhood literacy in libraries. This is a working group on like 30 topics, and we're trying to get them all. So all you can really, all the depth of this report, it may be that we're recommending further study. And so what we'll need to do is to develop the need to parcel this out to individuals to do this. And I do think probably everybody needs to do some report writing to make this work. I see Kelly's hand, and I also wonder, just briefly, I know that that some folks have a real head for templates and things like that. Is there somebody who wants to be the leader in developing the template? I know. Those who are on camera are like, why the heck am I on camera? I'm going to call on Kelly while the rest of you think about that. Who wants to develop a template or potentially offer to write one thing that could potentially serve as a conversation starter talking point for our group? Kelly?
Did we broach the subject of asking for more time?
We have not. I think we could ask for more time. I do think we're going to probably, I want to connect with the education subcommittees to offer to talk to them this legislative session and tell them where we are. There's an element of confusion on my part that has just come into my mind, which is the report is due when they're not in session. Right? Like, what are they going to do with it? Like, what will they do with
frequently
it?
true.
It is?
They'll distribute it and ask people to read it on their own time when they're not getting paid for it, as they do, right? They only pay them during the session, but the legislators do work year round.
That would enable them to read it and then do something with it. That's probably why it's on that time frame, so that they could potentially, but by beginning of November, that doesn't give them much time to create legislation around it. Right? If they were going to write something, that would be hard to write something and get it.
Yeah. I would say that's another conversation too, Kathy, and I don't know where the State Department of Libraries fits into this, but for those of us who are advocates, how are we going to use the report to ask for change from the legislature, to ask for additional investments, and what is appropriate for the Department of Libraries to do versus those of us who are outside to ask of the legislature to do, and how do we use this report for that? And there's no easy answer, right? But it's,
Don't stab yourself, Karen. It's not
it would suck to do all this work to create this report and then not actually have an advocacy agenda to take to the legislature.
Kelly I feel like your hand was up, but did you say something? I'm sorry, I'm just like my brain. I'm getting to the edge of the reason
comment. I told Karen not to stab herself. I said it wasn't worth it because she had a pair of scissors pointing at herself.
Oh, I missed that. I was like, what? What? Okay. So back to the question of the templates. At a high level, Christopher, you've outlined the template and we've spoken about it. I mean, I think in the minutes we will capture that the template could have the overview statement and the overview, the contextualization. The first portion of it would be an overview of the topic, contextualization, and include data relevant to setting the stage, pulled from the reports. Then what we learned from the community directly and what the recommendations are. The recommendations are pulled from the meeting that we held where we did that kind of what we've learned so far. We went through each topic. They're right there. So that shouldn't be the hardest thing to pull together in the world.
And again, as long as it can sort of wait to start until mid-January, I can help with that a little bit more and thinking a little bit more about what that might look like.
Okay.
I could even, ask people in my office what they think. And I think we should look at other examples as well, right? Like there's the VCRD has a lot of reports like that they create for the legislature and other stakeholders, and their models might be useful. And they tend to follow a very similar structure all the time.
Yeah, using an established structure rather than reinventing it would be great. I haven't had the time to look at that. But Christopher, if your team could look at that and then come back to us with a structure proposal we'll see, when would that be though? That would be our the February 17th meeting. I mean, that still gives us plenty of time writing wise. And then for that meeting as well, if every person could have ideas of your top three.
I put another link in the chat to the Vermont Council on Rural Development's reports page. And it's probably familiar to a lot of folks have probably done community visits with Vermont Council on Rural Development in the past. And then they do these statewide leadership summits, and they all follow this same kind of structure.
I have a thing I think I might be able to do, which is to send out a poll to each of you directly, to send each of you a poll of all of the topics we'll cover. And you each you rank your topics, and then I could come back to the group with the full set of like, if it's clear who's assigned what, that might be something we can do. Because I'm putting out a question to you all, you're answering me as the committee chair, and no work is being assigned outside the meeting, and we bring back the results.
I appreciate you asking for help very, very much.
It's hard. It's hard to ask for help, right? Like,
it is.
I'd love to be able to be that person who could just do it all. And but right now, with some of the other things going on and the continually moving target, like we're trying to develop this grant application for the buildings, and we haven't even gotten the word that we have the money, and people are asking so many questions.
Excuses. It's fine to ask for help.
It's just hard. I'm just noticing my own limits of capacity. So I'm modeling a plea for help and sanity, and also to take some of this off of my own team. And even as I said, oh, they could write the report. They gave you the report, and it's our work. It's our group we are the workers. So I do think there's a degree to which they're going to be preparing the next reports. So I think what's important is kind of what did we hear and where are we going with it. I do think we could ask for writing capacity for additional funds, but probably should have done that already to get the money this year.
I kind of think that if we do develop a template, that we can even subdivide what goes into it then, so no one has to write a big section, that you only have to write a smaller section. Smaller is always more doable.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah, I want to me, having a framework into which you plug information makes this process so much more manageable. It doesn't feel amorphous, and I think it's potentially even likely to get done then.
Yeah.
So I totally support that approach, at least as we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Susan?
And can we think of it as a first draft, so we're not carrying the weight of it has to be perfect, but we're all putting something together and we'll all take constructive criticism and improve it together?
Yeah.
Take some of the angst off.
Yeah, we need to it's like we have right now, I almost feel like we collectively have writer's block. So we need to get something on the page that we can respond to. And that sort of struck me when I was thinking about today's meeting and that there wasn't a consultant in place and like, don't want to just cancel the meeting. Let's use this time to develop something that will help reduce the costs. And the thing that I shared was like, that's like a couple hours just being like, hey, I'm dedicating this time so that we have something to respond to. We need something in front of us on each topic to respond to. And then people can say, oh, I liked this idea, or I like that idea, or this quote from so-and-so. I just remember so-and-so saying this. Can we try to get that and insert that in there? That might be a way to approach it, to really be gentle with ourselves and to say, we're getting something down so we get it started. And then we can collectively refine it. I do think we should probably plan to do, I think when we get toward the summertime, I think we might want to pivot with some of our meetings to do an in-person, to try to, when we're getting into that final refining of this thing, to do some in-person meetings instead of the virtual for the purposes of the writing. Still open meetings, of course, and that might be something that helps because then we're together and our distractions are minimized. Susan, thinking about some of your points in the past, dedicating the time and putting it on our calendars now that we're going to be together someplace in a room and we're going to work on this. I think we need to look forward to the summer and to put some of those onto the calendar. As special meetings if they're additive, or just to say this meeting will be in person with a virtual attendance possibility for somebody outside the working group. Okay, I feel like we're making progress, and I realized that I hate to do this, but there's something I forgot that I also needed help with, that I forgot to ask for it clearly at the end of the topic, which was the staffing and salaries survey development. Remember, it said in italics, it said that we wanted to insert some descriptions of those jobs. Is there anyone whose wheelhouse is like really, for whom those job descriptions in public libraries is really in your wheelhouse, for whom that would be an easy activity?
Not for all of them, but maybe I can do your circulation supervisor.
Okay. Wendy, can I ask, can you do all the circulation ones?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll give you a list of them. And that would be great if you can do all the circulation ones. Is there somebody who could do the descriptions of the librarian ones?
I can probably do that one.
Awesome. Okay, so Wendy's going to do circulation. Kelly is going to do
When do we want these by?
I think we'll probably bring this back next month. So if you can share your portions with me, I'll reach out to individuals who take these assignments now. I'll reach out to you directly with like a description of what exactly we need, because I know, Kelly, you weren't here for all of the salaries and survey discussion. But the next meeting is on January. So I want to be able to put the document, to share the document with everyone for the meeting. Our next meeting is on the 27th. If you could get those descriptions back to me probably around the week of the 16th of January. I mean, earlier is great, but around the week of the 16th would be super. The volunteers, someone in our team had a lot to say about volunteers. That was, I remember, back in my mind.
That was Jeanette.
Jeanette Bear. Yeah, Jeanette, can you do the volunteer section?
I can.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how, that to fit that. Are we using a template? I guess is the question.
The thing we're doing, it's not, we're using the existing, you'll use the existing set of questions, which I will email out and we can post a draft online. And
Okay.
then your thing is really in each of the categories right under the title, it's just a description of the position. The duties typically found in this position are bleh. That's all it is. It's not redo the whole survey because we'll still use the educational requirements, the number, the total number of weekly hours. It's just that informational piece about this is the description of what does a library page do. So that if somebody's titles don't align, that they can easily see this falls within this work. I have 6 people who do this. I have 1 person who does this. I do this. It's just that really brief position description.
Yes.
Okay. So it's going to be Jeanette volunteers, and then the library assistant director, custodial. I feel like because these will all, you'll just kind of provide the overview of the description, and then we'll bring it back. You'll email me directly with that, and then we'll bring that for conversation next month to firm it up together, to look at it all together.
Do you want me to do the custodial as well? We have a custodian in our building, so I'll be able to, yeah.
Okay, circ and custodial, but I'll throw in facilities because they're combined. It's just like whoever's working on the building. Okay, great. Maria Avery is coming back. Okay, I think we're in a good spot with that too. Okay. All right. Susan?
I missed a part of that conversation because I was off taking care of things. So it sounds like we're talking about job descriptions for the survey.
Yeah,
Did I get assigned something?
Would
what
you
should
like
I
to
be
do?
doing, I guess?
Susan, thank you. You could have just kept your head down and zoomed out with nothing, but I'd like your help. Could you help with the library director, the supervising librarian, and the assistant director? I think are the positions. I'll send you each an individual email with the portion of the task that you volunteered for today.
Okay.
And with next steps.
I'm not sure what a supervising director is.
A supervising librarian, like in a large library, maybe it would be better for somebody who has one of these to do it if we have anyone. Do we have anyone with a supervising librarian? So like say you're in a big library and you have multiple adult services librarians or multiple children's librarians, the one who oversees that unit.
Do you want, Susan, do you want to switch and you do the different librarians and I'll do the administration?
Wait, I didn't quite catch that.
Kelly had volunteered to do the children's librarian, children's and youth, adult, and teen. She's offering to swap with you because then you'll do those 3, the 3 librarian positions, and she's offering to do supervising librarian, assistant director, and director.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm going to make a note to flip-flop that. Okay. This is great. This is the best holiday present a working group chair could have. Thank you all for jumping in to help with with this. I want to keep it moving. So I think this is a good way to kind of spread out the work so that it doesn't get bogged down and behind other key priority things that I'm having to focus on in the next couple of weeks. So the idea here is that you're taking on the task of fleshing out the description, the general descriptions in these specific areas. I'll email each person who volunteered for something to state which ones you're doing and to share the information. Don't share it with other people in the working group. Just work on it by yourself. You can ask me if you have questions. I'll consolidate those and then I'll bring the updated draft back to the working group in January. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, we stayed over by 15 minutes and I apologize for that, but I think we've kind of actually got some folks engaged in doing work and we're making good progress. We have almost a year, a little bit less than a year. We can do this. It's manageable. We're doing it. It's not that we can do it. We are doing it. You are doing it. I appreciate your time. I'm really grateful for everyone's participation and prioritizing this work and supporting libraries statewide. I really appreciate each of you and thank you so much. And I'm glad we're not doing a 5 or 6 hour meeting today because I might need to start burning firewood in my dining area. So, I know that everyone has other stuff to get to now, so I'm going to adjourn our meeting and just thank you and happy holidays to anyone who celebrates and happy New Year. And thank you. Have a nice afternoon and stay safe in the snow.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody.